This month marks 50 years of the Pride movement. It began in the early hours of the 28th of June 1969 when a small group of gay, lesbian and transgender people stood up to the police who herded them out of a New York bar called the Stonewall Inn. The uprising spread through the city, the country and then the world. The Stonewall riots are credited as the foundation of the modern LGBTQ rights movement. And I'm joined in the studio by the award-winning British novelist Niven Govinden, whose fifth book, This Brutal House, is described as a timely, queer protest novel. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. Now, first of all, Niven, why did Stonewall change everything?
It changed everything because I think that was the first definitive moment where you saw collective group action in a really big way. I think it started from a very small, that one evening that turned into a collective movement for the whole sort of queer community within New York. And that was the sort of moment for queer civil rights and that change.
And Niven, you're releasing your fifth novel this month. It's called This Brutal House, set in the drag ballroom community in New York City. Now, 50 years on from the Stonewall riots, tell us the significance of bringing us a queer protest novel.
Well, it's kind of strange when I think about it because I was thinking about this book for 10 years and I wrote it. It took me 5 years to write it. And when you write a book, it's such a long period of time, you really don't have any conception of the climate your book's going to come out in. So it's just a really interesting correlation in terms of just how the mainstreaming of queer culture has really moved on in the past decade, and particularly in the last 5 years, coupled with, because for me this is very much a protest novel, and again there is a very active protest culture worldwide. When I started writing the book, I was thinking about Occupy, and then Black Lives Matter really took hold, then Me Too, and then obviously the marches against Trump and Brexit over here, and now climate extinction. And it's very interesting how I just think around the world collectively people really feel the need to protest en masse, just a physical presence, and that really sort of embodies what I've been trying to sort of explain in the book.
It's quite a different protest, though. It's very different to the Stonewall riots, for example. The book begins on the steps of New York City Hall. 5 ageing house mothers are sitting in silent protest.
Yes.
The mothers, just to explain a bit of context, are they're drag queens who take in members of the community, children, they call them, to give them food, shelter, and this safe space to explore their gender and sexuality. Tell us what the mothers are protesting about.
So the mothers are essentially protesting about the waves of disappearances, children disappearing from the street, whether it's through homophobic, transphobic violence, whether it's the effects of poverty. And they feel that those disappearances have never been adequately explained or handled with the attention they think it deserves by the authorities in New York. And they've tried to protest in various means, whether through political ways, through legal channels, through rioting. Nothing has actually worked. And basically the book starts after a sort of late religious conversion, and they decide that actually to sit in a silent mass of protest is going to be the way to unsettle City Hall to try and get the answers that they want.
Okay, well, central to the novel is this importance of marginalised groups being visible. We recently saw a flock of campified celebrities at the Met Gala.
Yes,
this year's theme was Camp Notes on Fashion. One of the stars on the red carpet who we see there is Billy Porter, who's in the TV series Pose.
Looking incredible.
Looking incredible.
That's how you do it.
That is about the ballroom community. Now, the second season is out this month. Lots of things are happening this June.
Yeah, it's a busy June.
Do you think drag, camp and queer culture has become mainstream, and what does that mean?
As I said earlier, yes, I think there is a mainstreaming of queer culture. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think anything where you give a platform to people within this culture to show you different stories, different experiences, and actually to move forward as artists and to sustain careers as artists is a pretty amazing thing. I think there'll be a lot of naysayers that people feel it is too mainstream and it's too commodified, but I think it's sort of about time. So I don't think it can be too commodified at all.
Now, belonging and family relationships and beyond blood ties are big themes in the book, and it's something also explored in a new film that's called Port Authority, which stars in the transgender actress Lena Bloom. Now, she was the first transgender actress of colour to have a film at the Cannes Film Festival.
Amazing.
This story is a love story. It's also set in the ball culture in New York. I chatted to her in Cannes. Have a listen to what she said about the movie.
Well, Port Authority is a love story. It's about so many spectrums of our human race, coming from black to white to trans to cisgender to ballroom to New York City, all those hashtags, you know what I mean? It's everything into one. We talk about the military, we talk about family, we talk about chosen family, we talk about new ideas of family, we talk about dance. It's just so much into one film, and that's why it's so much love into it.
And Niven, as well as Port Authority, some of the LGBTQ book titles out this year include The Love and Lies of Rukhsana Ali by Sabina Khan, If They Come For Us by Fatima Ashgar, Diary of a Drag Queen by Tom Rasmussen, Proud by Juno Dawson. There are so many. I wanted to ask you, what contribution do these books and films make to the current, somewhat torrid political climate?
I think increased visibility within culture, I think, is a massively important thing. I think the autonomy of artists to actually have the agency to write their stories, and for people, arts consumers to have access across those, I think is really important. And very much the more the merrier, I think.
Yeah.
And also, I think, it's very interesting within publishing that you see so many queer writers really being supported by publishers to actually, again, sustain careers and reach readers, not just queer readers, but just, readers beyond.
One of the events commemorating the anniversary of the Stonewall uprising is the exhibition Nobody Promised You Tomorrow, Art 50 years after Stonewall at the Brooklyn Museum. I wanted to ask you, how do you feel that communities, artists and activists can effectively make their voices heard today? And is it a sort of protest like in your book?
I think the most important thing is to be present, and you have to just keep creating work. And I don't think you can necessarily think about creating the work that other people want. It has to come from a very personal place to start with. And I think just the importance of being visible as an artist and creating work and putting that work out into the world is probably the most subversive thing you can do.
Much of the book comes from your own experience clubbing in New York's drag scene.
Yeah, sure.
Tell me about this title then, that not everyone will know, This Brutal House.
Okay, so it sort of plays on a number of things. Firstly, This Brutal House is an old house record from the late 80s by an artist called Nitro Deluxe, which was like an old voguing tune. So I liked the sort of nod to that. But also, it's a sort of reflection of the state of the voguing houses that these mothers look after and preside over, should I say. And they're really tough places. It's not a place for wallflowers. And, the novel is very much a book about chosen family, and it's also about chosen parenthood. And it's really about the mother speaking about how parenthood has been bestowed upon them. They didn't ask for it, and they're trying to find a way through in a very sort of imperfect way.
And your debut book was actually called We Are the New Romantic.
Yes.
Full of youthful energy. Whereas this book is very different. It's got a very different tone. When you look back at your earlier work, how do you feel like you've matured as a writer?
My writing style has definitely changed. I'm much more thinking about, sort of the tonal aspects of my work. And how just writing sentences really gives me that. And the first book was very kind of in your face, and it was my kind of statement of to say that I was really sort of here and I'd arrived, and this is a completely different kind of book, but it's very interesting because they're both sort of set within a sort of world of nightlife. So actually, when I look at the first book and see how the space between the first book and the experience that's led to this book is actually really interesting.
And what are you working on now?
I'm working on I've just started work on something new, which again is something complete. Every book is sort of a reaction against the old one. So the book that I'm starting now is something completely different. but it's still sort of embryonic, and I'm sort of holding it very close.
Okay. Well, we end every show with, I guess, cultural pick of the moment.
Yes.
Tell us what you've chosen.
I've chosen the new Tyler, the Creator album called Igor, which I absolutely love, and I'm just playing it to death. And Tyler's a really interesting artist. He's massively creative, and every record he puts out just changes from one style to the next. And this current phase is very much influenced by Pharrell and Chad Hugo's alter ego NERD from the sort of mid-noughties. So a lot of the sounds are very similar, but he's got this stamp that's completely him. So he's singing on some tracks, he's rapping really aggressively on other tracks, but it's got a really beautiful lyrical arc about sort of the rise and fall of a relationship. So it's a really vulnerable record with these really kind of tough beats underneath, and it's like incredibly danceable.
Well, the video that we're going to end with is Earthquake.
Which is a tune.
And the video is quite something. It's already had 17 million hits on YouTube, so we're going to leave you with that. Niven, it's been a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Niven Govinden's 5th book is called This Brutal House. He's reading at Paris's Shakespeare & Co. this evening. Remember our website, we're also on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. There's more news coming up on France 24 after this.
Don't be